everyone, I'm here with Michael Doherty. I'm Sanjana, an intern at JA, and welcome to another Fireside Chat. Michael, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for the invite.
So let's jump right into it. Please tell us about your educational and professional backgrounds and the path that you took to get to the position that you're in today.
Sure. So I have two degrees. My one degree is a bachelor's degree in geography, focused on GIS or computerized mapping. And then I have an MBA as well that I achieved after the fact, after starting work from Excelsior College. It was a kind of a combo with our job where we were working with both PSEG employees as well as Prudential employees. And we went through the same type of MBA courses together, both online as well as in person. So it was a good combination of that. So with that background in the computerized mapping, I had to come up about how I got to that point. And reality was my father worked for a fire department, and my experience around a fire department, I always wanted to be a firefighter. And for years, that was kind of always my career path, as I wanted to be a firefighter. And then as the time got closer and closer, I did my normal career interviews of specific people, both firefighters and then people working in the fire department. And first one was with the chief of the fire department. And I was all gung-ho about going to school for fire science, which would have been, basically learning the science behind firefighting and what, the combustion and all that stuff related to that. And what I ended up finding is, well, there's another path too. And the other path was through GIS. They had hired a mapping person there, and that mapping person specifically, their job was to map out the routes in the town to find the best route to get to a fire department. From the fire department to the fire department to wherever the accident was. The best route with the highest speed limits, the easiest maneuverability, and if there was any inaccessible roads, determining that. And so when I interviewed them the following year, so the first one was my sophomore year, then I interviewed my junior year, I realized this is something that really hit some of my things I was interested in. I was very technically savvy as far as, creating reporting. So as looking into that, I said, okay, let me look for the opportunity to do GIS. And that led me to my 4-year degree in Salisbury University. And then upon graduation, I looked for GIS jobs. There's many different career paths with that, where you could go with different industries. You can be consulting, you can be, individual mapping. You can work for a company that does, for hire mapping. And then I wound up working for a company for 6 months that was basically their job was to do tax maps, and they were updating tax maps for actually the town of, the city of Jersey City. So I worked on that, was my major project, and I did a few other ones. But basically they were combining and joining different areas of the tax map to update it for, where they were every 10 years or so. So that was my first 6 months. And then I wound up going and working for PSEG, doing mapping there. Then from the mapping, I ended up realizing there was a regulatory compliance portion that utilized the data from the mapping that really interested me. And I ended up going on that career path. And I've been there for the last 9 years. And basically I'm on to my 10th year there. And I actually started a new job earlier this year. I moved from the operations side of things to they call it DIMP, which is the Distribution Integrity Management Program. Basically what that does is it takes all of our pipeline that we have underground for our gas pipeline, and it analyzes what needs to be replaced first because of where failures actually occur, whether it be based on corrosion or, human factors or something else, some other natural factors that could cause issue, and then determining where the best replacement will be to protect the infrastructure for long time periods. And that kind of leads me up to today, where I love telling about my experience and explaining, the steps I took. I had an intern a few years ago, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to talk to him about what his career ambitions, and I still, touch base with him today about, where he went after he finished his internship, he came back the following year to work in a different group because he found a new interest point, because he liked what he was doing, and then he found another niche inside of the company, and now he's working in Washington D.C. doing exactly what is due, performance management. So that really excites me. So I jumped at the chance to have this discussion and talk about my experience.
That's awesome. And I really like how you mentioned you had sort of like a different career path in mind, but you were able to adapt and change as your interests change as well. So I think that that's really amazing.
Definitely.
Just moving along, did you have any sort of significant extracurricular experiences in high school and or college that really helped you later on in your career?
So the interesting part about my experience was a lot of it. I learned a lot of it through actually my dad, working with my dad on projects around the house and learning the step-by-step nature of life, that there are tasks that you have to do in your life where you have to figure out, problem solve something and come up with a solution. And it may be something from as easy as, how are we going to get this light switch to work, to how are we going to fix that, or simply, how are we going to get to the point we need to get to, meaning like, what's the best route or travel, or how are we going to design our vacation, and the step-by-step nature of that. And I really always credit him for teaching me that you've got to go step by step on things. And so a lot of the extracurricular was around working on the vehicles that my parents had, and learning how to work on vehicles, work on cars. That was also, how I learned the step-by-step nature of things, which really helped me when I did things like sports. My extracurricular was all sports. Ice hockey was my primary sport. I played football in high school. I did soccer when I was a kid. I played baseball all the way through high school as well. I did track for a few times. And what I learned in each one of those is, in order to get good at something, what are the steps you have to take to get better at it? And what are the steps you have to do, whether it be learning a new skill at it, or learning from your mistakes and getting to that point. And I think that's one of the biggest things. And my interest in sports led me to playing video games, with managing the rosters and learning how to update the rosters in the back end of earlier video games, like 10, 15 years ago. Video games where there wasn't the ability to just send updates to your actual system. So I would use the early internet and print out the roster and make sure that the people were in the right area. And then I learned how to use Excel that way. I learned how to manage Excel by going through these spreadsheets and just moving the people around. I found to enjoy that. And that was an extracurricular thing I did for hours on end. I would be sitting in front of my not actually playing the game, not actually doing anything with playing an actual game in the sport, but also just adjusting the rosters. And I enjoy it. And I could do it for hours on end and not be bored of it, and find something that interests me. And that was something interesting. It came with the sports, which interests me, but also learning how to use the technical side actually really helped. And when I was looking to find a career or figuring out what I wanted to do, my dad, again, going back to my dad really helping me out, said, he enjoyed what he did. And obviously everybody's always said, if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life, or one of those, things that people say. But the reality of it is, yes, if you find something you're good at, then doing the job isn't as difficult. You learn how you're good at it already, and now you just get to utilize it in different ways with different tasks that you have to do. Goes back to the step-by-step nature of what I learned growing up, as well as the step-by-step nature I do today in my job. Step-by-step nature I have to do in every task that I have to accomplish, and figuring out how to get there, whether it be goals in life, whether it be goals in family, whether it be goals related to careers, or just goals of where you see yourself in 5, 10, 15 years, and saying, okay, what is the steps that, to get there? And it goes back to working on a car, to playing on those video games, to playing the sports, and then going to school to basically harness those skills into something that was marketable to employers.
That's an amazing response. And I really like how you're able to tie those extracurricular interests of yours into your career interests. And I think a lot of the students listening in can definitely relate to that as well, in the sense that they're probably also involved in all these sports and clubs and things like that. And there's really value, like ultimately in all of those activities. So that was an amazing answer. Thank you for sharing. So my last question here is, what advice would you give to young people who will be embarking on their professional lives soon?
Well, the big thing is don't don't be concerned about not getting where you want to be right away. It takes time. Just like I just talked about the step-by-step nature of getting to a goal, it takes time to do things. Um, I started putting in resumes for jobs the beginning of my junior year in college, for career jobs afterwards. And that was a year and a half of me putting in jobs all the way through my senior year. And I didn't get an actual full-time job until 3 months after I graduated. So I was constantly, obviously, internet-wise, putting my resume out there, going to all these things, and nothing was coming. I ended up going back and working for 3 months to start full-time at my job that I was working at in high school, going back to where I was, which was very disappointing. After 4 years, you hope to start your career. But I took that and I kept working there, and I kept putting in resumes. I kept doing this, kept going on interviews. I kept doing the steps necessary to get to, utilizing my career, and, try to keep, fresh in my mind about the things that I really want to do, determine, hey, is there another industry that I'm missing where I should be, applying to? And then after those 3 months, I started a job. Well, the job paid about half as much as I expected. It was actually paying the same amount I was making at what was my high school job. I was making over minimum wage, but not, not to the level that you would expect with a 4-year to college degree. And I worked there for 6 months, and 6 months doesn't seem like a very long time, but when you go in 5 days a week and you're going in there for 8 hours, that's a lot of hours that you're putting towards a job. And I ended up working both of those jobs. I cut down the other hours to part-time, and I was working 2 jobs for a time period. Now, some people would be used to working 2 jobs, and maybe that's a regular thing for a lot of people. It wasn't necessarily regular for me. And it did cut away from some of my, confidence with getting to where I wanted to be, because, all right, I'm working at a job, not making as much as I was hoping for. And I'm still making the same amount in the job that I really don't like, but it's my, high school job, and I'm experienced with it. I understand, the importance of doing it, and it, paid all the bills that I had, my car, stuff. I helped pay for all my, extracurricular fun stuff. Had to live from home for that time period because, well, I just wasn't making enough in order to really go out on my own. Aside from getting a roommate or different people, and, luckily I stayed there. Fast forward those 6 months, and then I finally found the job that, I'm still here. I'm still at the same company. And it took some time. I actually started out as a contractor working here. So I was being hired by a contracting organization working for PSEG, my company. But I worked there for a year as a contractor, again, making more than I was making before, but less than I would be making if I was the people that are around me that had the full-time jobs at the organization. And what you did, you kept with it. You got up every day, you went to work, you did your best, you learned everything you could possibly do. A job opened up in the organization in a full-time capacity. And I was like first on the candidate list because I already had experience there. I'd already learned from what I did. I'd already shown that I can be a good employee, that I would be consistent with my work. I would get up every morning and get to that point. And from that point on, life just got better and better, because not only did I have a full-time job, I was making the money I could. I was able to, use more money, save more money, put things away, figure out my future, figuring out where I wanted to move to, what my next step in life was, and then move out of the house, work, rent a place, and work my way up to a point where, 2 years ago, I was able to purchase a house, and you guys probably see the house behind me, purchase the house behind me. And I work from home now. So I use that as my backdrop because that's where I am with the whole pandemic. But taking your time and getting there, it's going to take many years. I'm 32, and I did not think that it would be taken until I'm 30 years old to be able to purchase a house and be able to be comfortable with that and be, a long-term, 30-year mortgage. But it took the time to do it. It went from, not getting the job you were hoping for, not getting the pay you were hoping for, but still learning as you go along. And step by step, you get to where you want to be. You get to your long-term goals. And now you have the ability to figure out even longer goals. What are you going to do the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Now you have the skills, your resume gets built up and built up as your experience. Learn from each one of those experiences and draw from them. And it sounds like things you've heard probably before, but it does take time to go through. And don't be, keep your motivation going forward as to what you want to do. And maybe you have to work more than one job. Maybe you have to take a job you really don't enjoy, but maybe you're doing something you like and you just really don't enjoy working there. And you just learn, hey, okay, this is the lily pad. This is the stepping stone to getting to where I want to be. And that's where I'm at today. And I'm very happy. I make very good money for the amount of time and effort and the earliness of my career. Again, it's only 10 years into my career, after graduating from college. This is where I'm at. And I'm very happy with the steps that I took to get there. And they all stay on my resume, and they all are things that I'd like to go back and draw upon to discuss it, whether it be in a future interview or just even having a discussion with, a neighbor's son or daughter who is in the same situation, just as you guys are as students, figuring out what your next step in life is. And sometimes you may not even have that going into college. I was lucky enough to kind of have a pretty broad idea of what I want to do. And here's an opportunity to have a job when I graduated by doing this skill and taking my experience onto it. And that's what led me to this, to this point today. And just really want everybody to understand that there are a lot of steps and there are a lot of things that you're going to fumble over and things you're going to learn. And, you may get fired from a job. It happens. But learn from that. What did you do wrong? What did they not like? And then figure out how to make yourself even more and more marketable as you go along. And marketable is just basically, what are your skills? How can you relate to them? When you go in an interview, can you explain how your last job started, how your last job ended, and what you learned in between?
Absolutely. And that's really amazing advice. I think, even just from my perspective, I took a lot away from that. And I feel like just as young people, it's really easy to get so caught up in this idea of our future and like what we're supposed to do and what's out there for us. And it just is really overwhelming. So it was really honestly reassuring to hear that it's okay to not have everything figured out all at once. So thank you so much for that. So thank you for joining us again. I'm sure the students will all take so much away from this as I did. Do you have any just sort of final thoughts that you wanted to put out there before we end the session?
Sure. I mean, there's one final thought, and I kind of wrote it down when some of the questions were posed to me as far as, what steps to take. And I talked about, finding something that you're good at, and you may not know what you're good at. Find somebody that does know what you're good at and ask them. Get some experience with people you've worked with, people that have been around you, your parents, people that have known you for years. What am I good at? You may not know it yourself, and you may have a hidden skill that you don't necessarily know you have, but you may do it without even thinking. You may have the gift of gab, as people say. Maybe you're a really good talker. Maybe you're really good at marketing or selling certain things, whether it be things you've sold in the past or things that you may sell in the future. Are you good at playing around with computers? Maybe that computers is something you do on your fun time or things that you like to do on your own. But is that something you could do as a job? Is that something that maybe it's not going to be as much fun as when you're doing on your own? But is it something that you can get half of the enjoyment out of and yet the other half of your job is bearable because you're getting paid to do the tasks it takes to get there. And, understanding your skills and learning from your failures, learning from the things that you're not good at and recognizing them. Again, the same people that can tell you what you're good at can tell you what you're bad at. Over the years here, one of the things they do, which is very nice, is performance management. They talk to you and tell you what you're not doing well and things you have to learn from. And my biggest thing was communication. When I started this job, I was very shy, and I still am on the shyer side. And there are a lot of people in this world are. The amount of introverts and extroverts, people know, what they are. But the reality is, I was a really big introvert, to the point that I didn't want to pick up the phone when somebody was trying to call me that needed answers or needed me in a job. And now I get to the point now where I can talk in front of a group of people. Obviously, this is on Zoom and I don't necessarily see the group of people, but I can get in front of 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 people and talk about anything, because I've taken the time to learn, hey, that's a skill I'm not good at. It may not come naturally, and it may take a lot of hard work to get there, but I got good at it. And now I get recognized as that's one of my skills that I'm good at, versus something that I was bad at when I started. And the biggest thing is recognizing, hey, you may not believe that you're bad at it, and you may believe you're good at it, but if somebody says you're not great at it, learn how to get better at it. And the steps you have to take, again, systematic. What do you need to do to get to where you are? And today, I'm very happy that I know what my faults are still. I am working to recognize them and try to address them going forward. And some of them are very difficult. Everybody has bad habits, and everybody has experiences that cause those bad habits. But knowing that they're there is the first step of being able to get better at them, being able to recognize them when you're doing things wrong, and finding a way to try to be better at it and try to get better and eventually be good at it. And it takes a long time to get there. And I think that's a huge part. When you talk in front of people, it's scary. When you're around other people at a job, when you're first starting out and you don't necessarily know everything, it's very scary. Learn from the people that know how to do things. Ask the questions to get the answers you need to get better at what you are bad at. And the things that you're good at, utilize to try to improve the things that you're not good at. And I think if you take those steps, whether it's in any industry, from your first job to your forever job in your career, if you acknowledge that you're not perfect and that everybody is going to need to learn something about the things that prevent them from being the best they can possibly be. There are CEOs out there that run big companies that still have failures, that still have faults and still have problems and things that they need to get better at. And recognizing that, those people that are on the top of the world, they have faults. They have things that they have to learn from too, that they're continually learning and understanding how to get better at them. And sometimes you get good at something and then you get bad at something. And then sometimes you may have to try again to relearn it to do it better the next time. And so if you take those steps, no matter what industry you go to, no matter what degree you go for college, whether you go into technical school or you go into a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, or maybe you take a year off in between to try to figure out what do you really want to do. If you address some of the things that you're not good at or understand the things you are good at, it helps give you an idea of where do you need to be? What are the jobs you need to go to? And both myself and my younger brother had to do that. My parents were very honest with us. They told us, you're not going to play in the NHL. I'm not going to be an NHL goalie. It's not going to happen. I'm not naturally gifted, and it's going to take a lot of time to get there. And I didn't start in the right path to get to that point. But I can get as good as I can possibly be, finding all the faults along the way. And maybe at a certain point you plateau. Then you find a way to figure out how to get it back up again. Is there another way for you to excel at something else? And is there a different career path that you may have to take a switch? That sometimes happens too. You get into a job and you think it's all you want it to be. And you start on day one, you're like, okay, I can do this. And then along the way, you get there and you're like, it's not getting any better. And you're like, all right, let me find the good things out of this job. And maybe at a certain point you say, I'm going to have to do a little U-turn here. I'm going to need to go back and maybe I need to find a different route and find a different path, or maybe I'm not in the right industry I need to be in. I like this parts about the job, but I don't like these parts. All right, is there another opportunity where I can use these and not have to do these? My thing when I was a kid was customer service. I didn't like to be in customer service. I worked in retail. I didn't like people. I wasn't good in front of people. I was very shy. It's very hard to be a cashier when you're shy, when you have to ask certain things from people. But what I did is I got better and better and better. And from day one, when I was a 16-year-old kid and learned how to do that to where I am now, again, another lifetime at that point. Now 32, I'm confident enough to talk about the things that I was failing about back then, and understanding that those flaws that I had then, I recognized them and got to where I am. It took me 16 years to get from first day to where I am today, in order to be at a point where I'm like, yes, I finally have figured out how to get past some of those initial problems, and I still have improvement in the future. And so if you recognize that you continually learn, continually try to get better at certain things, recognizing the things you're good at and recognizing the things you're bad at, you're never going to fail at becoming a better person, becoming a better employee, and just becoming better all around. And I think if you take all that, it's really going to help you going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really goes to show the idea of lifelong learning and improvement and really stepping outside of the box, which are all very, very important. So
Definitely.
thank you again, Michael. And this was a really great session. So thank you so much for giving us all of this advice and sharing.
Not a problem. I appreciate the opportunity.
Let me just stop recording.